This episode of All Things Business, the podcast, is brought to you by our digital media partner, DFA Law. DFA Law, providers of expert and dedicated legal advice to businesses and families since 1838. DFA Law, the law firm for life.
Frazer,
Ben,
how are you?
very well, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, good.
Good. Somewhere different again?
I know. One of my favourite places in Milton Keynes.
It is lovely. It's I don't know if you can see this here, but a view over the treetops of Milton Keynes, which is something that's rarely said, is beautiful. But we're at the home of good friends of ours, Aiimi, with us, Steve Salvin. Introduce yourself, Steve.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Steve Salvin. I'm the CEO of Aiimi. Good to be here today.
So we've become quite good friends of Aiimi over the last couple of months and enjoy working together. We've held an event here for the Milton Keynes Education Awards, but a brief whistle-stop summary for those that may not know Aiimi. You've been in the city for a little while now, didn't start here, but just an overview of what Aiimi do.
Sure. Aiimi is we're a technology company. We specialize in digital, data and AI. And really that's helping pretty large organizations get to grips with digital strategies and data, and we're really trying to help them get value out of that. Our purpose, our mission statement is connecting people to insight. And so no matter what we do, we're trying to find insights and value for people in large organizations. We started the company in March 2007, so 17 years we've been going. And as you say, we formed the company in London Bridge, kind of consider that our old home, our stomping ground. But in 2019, we actually signed a 10-year lease on this building. We made the decision to move to Milton Keynes actually 4 years before that in a business plan. And that was really important because we gave everybody in the company who'd been hired from all around the UK chance to get their heads around that we were moving to Milton Keynes.
Just if I can just come in there, Steve.
Sure.
Why Milton Keynes at that time? And also 4 years. That's plenty of warning for the staff, which is great, but it's also a significant amount of time.
Yeah. So Milton Keynes. First of all, we're in London Bridge, in a really nice location, but we're paying rent-wise about £100 a square foot. In Milton Keynes, a premier is somewhere between £20 and £25 a square foot. So a significant reduce there. The business rates were £20 a square foot. Here there were £6, and service charge was £20, and here it's £7.
So there wasn't a 2-year option then.
No. And yeah, we were growing so fast, it would just have become unaffordable.
But why Milton Keynes and not, for example, I don't know, Oxford or Leicester, where you've got similar rail links to get into London, similar rail routes as well?
Well, a predominant factor was where our customers were located. So the biggest customers at the time were Rolls-Royce in Derby, JLR in Coventry, Anglian Water, that are based all around the east of England, but their headquarters is in Huntingdon. So Milton Keynes was a sweet spot in the midst of all of those. It is in between Oxford and Cambridge, which was important to us. But rent-wise, I think it was about half of Oxford and Cambridge as well. So this was the place to come. It was affordable and in the perfect location.
I think as well, that insight or foresight into it that I always refer to, and a lot of people do as well, that Milton Keynes has now become the epicenter of tech within the UK. So favourite expression of ours in the office is shepherds, not sheep. But did you have an insight into that the tech movement coming to Milton Keynes at the time, or was it just purely Milton Keynes is centralised to where we need to be, the cost, the office, the fit out, that's where we're going?
I think in the first instance, most of us who've worked in the tech space in the UK, a lot of the North American software companies had taken spaces in Stockley Park or in Reading. And we kind of wasted our lives commuting into those areas. It was just an awful experience. Business parks where no one can park. And we wanted to be somewhere that was new, up and coming. We didn't really move here because it was a tech startup. But when we did come and we met with the council and lots of different education facilities like at Cranfield and MKU, we started then getting connected with that tech scene. And then became obvious it was the place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, me and Ben always talk about this, that you're forever at a train station watching people leave the town and the city that they're in to go south, to go north. But then one of the greatest things with Milton Keynes is you're seeing people come north and come south to come to work in the city. So, yeah, it's brilliant to see.
What was your head count when you were at London Bridge? Just roughly.
I think we were 50 at that point, yeah.
And here we are,
200.
200. And one of the things I want to talk to you about, or one of the questions I've got for you, Steve, is Aiimi isn't a family, it's a business.
That's right.
And we've had conversation about this before, about at what point does, because I've always treated my team, all right, different levels here, because there's only 27, 28 of us, but I've always said to the team and had this sort of family mindset. But I read your document, your blog, and I thought, yeah, he's nailed this. So just talk us through that.
I think it's something that we're still figuring out, but I guess an essential part of our company, one of the reasons why it exists, is that we wanted to create a space where we feel that we can be ourselves, be our best. We can come and care for each other, and avoid some of the corporate life that I've kind of been brought up in, where it's pretty tough. It's I guess geared more towards the super senior people that get all of the perks and whatnot. And so a big part of here was creating something that was more on a level, flatter structure. And because we really did care about each other, I think we fell into a bit of a trap that it was a family. We used to talk about new starters, welcome to the Aiimi family. And genuinely, that's how we felt. And I think people coming into our company, one of the reasons why they did come is they were put off by some of that other corporate culture and really enjoyed the vibe and the feeling when they got here. But I think what's happened is, as we've been growing and evolving, as you say, from 50 to 200 people, and as we've also gone through some trauma with the things that, for example, COVID, when you go through something like that, there's part of you as the leader has to reassure everybody that we're going to be okay. I mean, I remember telling everyone that there was only one bus, and that everyone was going to stay on it. And it was something I genuinely believed. And again, it's that caring thing, but we I think, inadvertently talked about a family and wanting to keep everyone safe. But then as we've grown again and we've come through that pandemic, there's been a few instances where we've had to say to a few people, we don't want you to work any longer in the company. We've actually asked them to leave. And that's due to performance issues, just generally things that are happening in every company. But when you start growing and you're 200, suddenly the likelihood of finding someone that you're going to have that difficult conversation with increases. And something that we've always been, I think, pretty strong about is maintaining a high bar, making sure that everybody in the company is an expert and is committed to, making customers happy. And when you go through then those difficult conversations, suddenly then you realize that actually we're not a family. If you were a family and you had a really difficult conversation with a brother or a sister or a cousin, it doesn't end with you asking them to leave.
Scrap.
Yeah, exactly. And having gone through a few cycles of that, we've come to realise that actually it's inappropriate to call it a family.
So here's a question for you then. At what point do you think that switch comes in? Is it when something significant happens within the business in terms of a client win? Is it a threshold of 100 employees? Or was there a moment where you thought actually the shift's changed now? The Aiimi family we've got to sort of change that mindset.
I don't think there was a moment, no. I think seeing some of our staff confused and upset why some people were leaving and not being able to fully understand that, they interpreted that as maybe we're not caring and maybe our values are different. But behind the scenes, I can't be transparent about those issues and those reasons. That's confidential with the person that it's happening with. And so suddenly things are happening that other people find a little bit odd. And I can see why it might be interpreted differently. But no, I don't think there was anything in Aiimi's growth. In my personal development, I'm always looking at other companies, looking at their stories, seeing what we can learn. And there was a particular article that came out about 6 months prior from Spotify, and they had a similar realization that they're a team and a high-performing team, not a family. And it made me go and do a little bit of research. And I was actually, kind of at the same time with Avid, I was started to watch the series about Beckham. Yeah. And there was that quote from Ferguson in there where he said, we're not building a team, we're trying to build a club, and he's trying to make everyone realise that this is a much bigger thing than a team or a family. So
when I read that, I thought that was probably quite hard hitting for you at the time when you look back and go, because you're stuck in that moment of we've got a team of 50, it's all about those 50 people, but then you've stepped back and gone, no, this is the future. How do we build? How do we grow? Difficult question, but when you were at 5 employees, 10 employees, 15 employees, if you could turn back time, would you have changed the family team to the business earlier? Do you think that would have made a difference to the business?
You mean in terms of a high-performance team? Yeah.
That's a great question. And, I don't think it would have made a difference. I think, we've spoken a little bit about this before, and when you are a very small team, you're intimate. You kind of know how people are every single day, where everybody is. You're in tune with the moods of people, everything. And I just think it's inevitable that through that proximity, that closeness, that it does feel more family. Yeah. So no, I don't regret it at all.
Comes back to the, which I think is a great analogy about the Olympic rowing team. You don't just have the 8 fastest rowers. It's about getting the people in the right position. And I like to compare business with football in terms of having you need to have the right squad. You need to play the right formation, which sometimes differs from month to month, but you got to have the right people playing in the right position. Mohamed Salah does not go and take goal kicks. We'll leave that to Alisson Becker, and that's why Frazer doesn't get involved in HR.
Yeah, that and a number of reasons. No, the reason I ask is we've said this a lot, and people that watch and listen will know that we always say everything happens for a reason, and that not quite light bulb moment, but that transition, that pivot, if we're talking about COVID and famous phrases, that pivot from there has accelerated, in my personal opinion, Aiimi forward. Like Ben said, you think. We've been through it. We thought we had the best team. Our starting 11 was the strongest. But then the transfer window came. We made some changes and it's pushed the business on.
I think were you during that COVID period when you said, everyone's on the bus, we're staying on the bus. Were you scared at the time? And who did you reach out to? Like who helps you in terms of, do you have a mentor yourself or someone that you speak to on a regular basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when COVID came, it was definitely terrifying. I think we had the benefit of what had been going on in China for 4 months. I don't think most of us knew in that February, March, kind of in a blind eye to it. But suddenly when we were then in the thick of the March, April lockdown, we then started to look back at China and how those companies had favoured. And what we saw was lots of the companies that potentially would have gone to the wall reinvented themselves, and they just became, restaurants became delivery companies, couriers. And I think just like any good innovators, investors, challengers like we all are, I felt confident that we would adapt and cope with it. But in reality, we were going to be dependent on how our customers reacted to it. Had we have had a load of pubs, hotels, travel companies, I don't think we'd have done too well, and we probably would have had to reinvent ourselves. But as it happened, all of our customers suddenly needed more data and digital skills. Digitizing manual processes became the big ticket. For me, a really good example of it is over that period, somehow the NHS managed to digitize our medical records, and we could see the doctor remotely. It just wouldn't have happened, would it, without COVID? Yeah. So it brought us an awful lot of opportunities.
It was an accelerator. One of the questions that I had, but it sort of forms into two, is it's AI is, some people are threatened by AI, but also it's probably a great time for you to say it, but how important is data to a business? How many businesses overlook the data that they've got?
Or maybe even undervalue.
They
undervalue their
immensely,
data.
To quote Rory Sutherland, everyone's obsessed with new data, and they forget about the data that they currently have. But the insight that you're able to see must be phenomenal, right?
Yeah. Just picking up on your AI question, I went to Manchester University 87 to 90. And in there I did maths and computer science, and I did a module then on AI. Wow. AI has been around for a couple of decades before that as well. It isn't actually that new. Really, the buzz of AI has come to the mainstream through ChatGPT that came out in November 22. And I think what's happened is the masses have become aware of it and have become amazed by what it can do. And it started to kind of go on this hype cycle. And I think when things like that happen, you get a lot of people who, are doom and gloom that we're going to be dead as a result of it, and then others that think it's just going to transform life beyond what we know it. And in reality, it's neither of the two. It's somewhere in the middle. Yeah. But what is quite cool about AI, and linking it to your data question, is it shined a new light on how important your data is and how valuable it is. And not only that, AI really does require very high quality information. If you think about it for a minute, AI has the ability to do things for you and make decisions for you. So we're in an era where we're potentially divesting decision making to a model. Yeah. So if you just think about that for a moment, if we do go down that route, we've got to be 100% sure that the AI model is given very accurate, high quality data. Otherwise, it's going to get the wrong answers and make the wrong decisions for us. And in a way, again, I feel blessed, genuinely blessed, that AI has come along, created this hype cycle, but most organizations are starting to realize that if we're really going to adopt this and we're going to get the value out of it that it promises, we've got to go back now and look at our data again. And in reality, data is a very boring, technical, difficult subject that is kind of put into the hands of lots of geeks data geeks who love talking about technology and complicated words. And business people can often get a bit put off by it.
Yep.
AI is this cool kid. It's come along that everyone now gets it. And actually, they want to have a conversation about how we can get the data good now because they really want to operationalize it and get the value from it.
But I love my data in terms of simple things, but in terms of open rates and performance on how this episode's going to do. That'd be one of the first thing I would say probably within, I mean, we have a WhatsApp group and Arthur provides us with updates, and then it's a question of well, how many people, at what point
what's the views, what's the download, so no pressure.
Yeah. but I love all of that. I genuinely do, but I'm definitely not intelligent enough to be an insight engineer or to start looking at algorithms, etc. in more detail.
To me, I've been fascinated by our data. I only understand our data all the time, our mailing, our social, our emails and everything, because that helps us as a business create this awareness of our audience and everything else. But I do find it sometimes lazy that people have all of that information. But like you say, I love that. AI is the cool kid that's gonna sort it all out. Yeah, there's the headline for this one. Arthur. AI is the cool kid. But going back to people's misconceptions about AI, because like you say, it's been there for years, but the buzzword, it's one of the words I had written down, that it's become so popular. Is it a lack of understanding from the general public of what AI is, that they see AI as, to quote, I saw a stat the other day that 70% of the jobs are going to be replaced by AI. I call absolute crap on that.
Just stop reading the Daily Mail.
No. That wasn't the Daily Mail. That wasn't the Daily Mail. And I called nonsense on it straight away, because that's a fear factor, an absolute fear factor. That, as you just said, and you nailed it perfectly, that if the data isn't 100% spot on, the AI isn't going to be able to yield the results that you want it to. So yeah, is it? Do you think people generally on general public, their misunderstanding of what AI can do?
100%. I think the vast majority of people, let's excuse those in the tech world, but the vast majority of the public see AI now. Really, it's Gen AI. That's really what they're doing. They're looking at ChatGPT, they're playing around with it, seeing if it can make a poem, help them maybe write a job application. They're the classic things. And really what we're seeing there is an algorithm that's really good at predicting the next word in a sentence. It's not that fantastically intelligent. It's just been trained on the whole of the content of the web, and it's learned about language and how words are put together. Again, going back in my day at university, there are AI is effectively an algorithm, a statistical algorithm that's good with numbers, that can identify correlations and patterns in data. And that's actually, from a scientific point of view, the most common use of AI. So think AI in healthcare, where it's able to look at blood samples or biopsy samples. And what happens there is it can create a digital picture, and then because we can say these samples here had this outcome, we can start to train a model that it starts to learn these patterns have this one outcome, these patterns have that
identify
outcome. And then you give it something it's never seen before, and it can say, actually, within 4 months, we think this is going to happen to this person.
So it could predict, it's identifying what could happen to that individual.
Exactly. And those similar algorithms exist today. For example, we know of one company that we're working with who's bringing lots of different data together, and we're able to identify patterns of criminality in there. We've not necessarily trained an algorithm what a criminal looks like, but the algorithm has identified some anomalies, some patterns, and with a human, we can go, oh, that is this classification, that's likely that this is going to happen from it. We can do the same thing with, for example, let's say an organization is doing hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of jobs each year, maybe maintaining an asset, we're able to bring lots of different data together, which might be data from the van that was driven to get to the job. It might be data around the job that we've given them. It could be what tools and equipment and spare parts are in the van. But by looking at all that data, we can then start to see patterns of jobs that weren't fulfilled, jobs that were aborted halfway through. And then we can start linking outcomes to patterns. And then we can look at all of the jobs that are in the hopper to do, and we can start predicting which ones are going to fail and why. And that then gives you insights and value, allows you to do something different and make sure everything gets done well.
Looking at your one of the walls that you've got here in reception, you've got your skateboards with the values or the of each of your clients all branded up, which I think is fantastic. I love it. It was the first thing that got me when I came here for the first time last year. One thing that's noticeable is the diverse range of sectors that you work within. Is there a sector that you don't already work in that you think, do you know what, AI could really benefit that one particular sector? Or are you already working in that? And if so, what sector is it?
We did some analysis a couple of years ago, and we found out we've worked with 250 different companies, and they span 28 different markets according to Dun & Bradstreet. So you're spot on. Our skill is data and digital and AI, not a particular industry. That said, it would be nice if we get more customers from some of the industries that we're already in, because you kind of learn the language, you learn some of the pain, and every time you find a new one, it's a little bit harder, but it's also fun. It's part of the job. And I remember actually as a consultant being able to go and work in a bank for a couple of years and figure out this whole world that goes on there. And then next 2 years I'm working with a car manufacturer or with a nuclear power station. Part of being in this game means you learn lots of different walks of life.
And on that, when you formed Aiimi, you were, I suppose, at the heart of it, you were a data engineer. Would that be the right job title? Or I don't know if I've offended you there.
No.
I think you might have a little bit.
How dare you? What would be the job? What would be? You go where I'm going with that. What would be describe the job role then? Is it a data engineer? Is it a data analyst? Software engineer? What would it be?
So if you split the company in half of us would come from a data management background, and half what we would call content management background.
Yeah.
And it's really the two halves of the information landscape. Data is what sits in corporate systems like SAP, Workday, Xero, Sage. They're usually systems of record transactions, but data can be telematics that comes from driving vans. It could be telemetry, how much power, how hot is something operating at. And content management is things like documents, office documents, emails, web content. It could be social media, but one of those two halves is where the company's from.
But from you, as Steve Salvin, does Steve Salvin prefer the role as CEO, leader, visionary now with 200 people on the bus, or did you love that data management part when you were growing, having fun trying to find those algorithms and working with the AI? Is there a bit that you miss?
Sure, there is. And so in my career, you're right. I started off as a software engineer. I did that for a few years, and quickly found that there was lots of software engineers a lot better than me. I gravitated towards the customer and making the customer happy. I didn't mean to. I wanted to be the best software engineer. And I moved into more of a project manager, business consultant, making customers happy ultimately and getting the best out of the team that I had. And I grew my career there. And I've had a couple of jobs for 2 North American software companies where I've ran EMEA. And in both of those jobs, I've gotten to a point where I felt like the highest paid secretary in the company, and I've hated it. Ultimately, I felt like a messenger between a North American president carrying out the orders in Europe to every country, but all I'm doing is taking a spreadsheet and telling people what numbers they need to hit. So I've never been a very good corporate citizen. And instead I found whenever then I've gone and done a startup, gives me the excuse to work with customers, to be on customer site, to be collaborating, challenging, coming up with new solutions using data and digital. And they're my best days.
And that's one thing that's really clear is that customer journey. You want to treat every customer like a VIP, and that comes through in leaps and bounds, which I really tip my hat to that.
It's great to hear it as well, because we all say we put the customer first, right? But you can really see and feel that here, that customer service, that customer journey is the most important side. We're going to stick on the team because I think the team behind Aiimi is fantastic. But
Let me jump in. Aiimi, where does Aiimi come from?
I was literally just about to say it.
Oh, all right, mate.
Aiimi is the name is an acronym. All information is made insightful.
That's miles away from what we were guessing in the car on the way here.
Arthur had AI in Milton on it.
Yeah, I think the last I had is indigo because I'd run out of words beginning with I to use.
That's brilliant. That's great.
Sorry, just picking up on that. So the reason why Aiimi exists is a number of us have worked in large organizations. I'm talking 40, 50,000 people, petabytes of data. They've usually got 400 or 500 different corporate systems. And most people in those organizations struggle to find information they need day to day, unless it's in a particular system that they're used to, that they've saved it themselves personally. It doesn't have to go much wider than them or the team before it's very dark. And we did some analysis, and we found that 73% of all information that's created in most companies is only used on the day it's created. So information is then lost and recreated over and over again.
How many Google Docs have you got, Frazer?
Hundreds. Well, I've got even more now because I've duplicated them and moved them into Teams. So I've got even more. But you're literally like light bulb moment. It is a light bulb moment because we learn something off of these all the time. And literally the two questions I was just going to ask. Aiimi, what does it mean? And the why. We talk about the why in business, and you just nailed it without me asking, because you can become obsessed. And I can picture myself now. 2020, we hit 1.6 million people digitally. I went mental for a week on doing it all, and then it's February and it had gone. And I still look back now because that's over 4 million, and we're continuing to grow. But yeah, it's shiny ball, right?
If one of the inspirations I got was from Airbnb when they were looking at their data platform when they were kicking off. One of the, mantras, missions that they set is that if information existed that had value to someone, they wanted people to be able to find it and reuse it. So that's something that's always been at the heart of me. Another big thing is I was part of that technology software vendors that would happily come and sell you a new data warehouse, a new content management platform. And their story was, if you moved everything in here, we'll organize it properly for you and everything will be okay. But in reality, we did move it all in there, or they did move it all in there. And 2 or 3 years later, it was like spaghetti like everything else. And so a big part of our why is, why can't we create something that allows people to leave everything where it is? A system was bought for a really good purpose, but leave that information there. Why can't we create a layer that then understands all of this information, that can describe it in a common way, and create a new data asset, something that can be used by all different parts of the business to power what they want to do? And that's been a big part of our journey. We created a new asset that didn't exist, and subsequently, the world has started to catch up, and phrases like data mesh, data fabric. Gartner have even created a magic quadrant called insight engines. But we were talking about this 10 years ago.
Shepherd's not sheep, Steve. That's right. Shepherd's not sheep. When we talk about the team, because we touched on it lightly a moment ago, the team are incredibly important here. And you've, by the sounds of it and from what we've read and spoke about before, you've learned a lot in a good way and a bad way of the corporate life. That stress on your mind, body and soul. Two things I saw last week when I was just seeing it was the pressure on keeping the right workforce for tech here in the UK. And the second thing that I sort of blew my mind was the therapy that's available to the staff within Aiimi. Kick me off, because I think the tech thing's quite easy, that if we don't lead from the front, everyone that's skilled in that sector is going to leave the country, and then we'll move on to the therapy side, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I think we've always been pretty good at finding new talent, but we've been getting them from far and wide, from all different universities. We made a relationship with MKU and Cranfield before we moved. We actually had one of our data scientists on a panel helping them drive the curriculum. But since we've started to grow at pace, and we've wanted our centre of gravity to be here in Milton Keynes, so that people naturally want to come in and be in the office, that meant we've had to target more locally. And as a result of that, we've gone into schools and we've started some apprenticeship programs with Milton Keynes College. So it is a challenge. I think probably the bigger, longer term UK PLC challenge is around investments. As companies like ours want to scale and seize on the opportunity, seize on this moment, we do need to kick on and grow. And go on.
I was just going to come in, if I may. How do you align success? What does success look like to Aiimi there? For example, do you want to be able to see 5 local people come from the local education, for example, MK College, MKU, or is it 15, or is it 10 every 2 years? Have you got any numbers around that?
Well, where our company is doubling every 2 or 3 years. So it's a problem that's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger year on year. So we hired 50 people last year. We're going to hire 75 people this year.
In 2024?
Yeah. And so you can see, you just project that forward 2 or 3 years. And we've got to be finding and targeting some of that talent now that's going to be coming onto the marketplace then.
So literally pupils in year 9 and 10 could be part of your 2025, 2026 strategy.
Correct. So we've this year we've introduced a work experience program and an intern program, which is really aimed at driving people, giving them an opportunity to come and meet us with a view that they might fancy what they see and then come and join us.
Do you know what? There's a TV documentary in this. I mean that. You imagine a fly on the wall, go to 2027, and you can imagine this as an hour on Netflix following the Aiimi journey, that AI journey, in terms of being at 200 staff, and now we're at 750 or whatever it is.
Tech is the future. We know from how ingrained we are in that education sector and process that tech is fascinating, but tech is so broad, it's unreal.
There's a stat here, right? And
don't get it wrong.
I will. But it's something like, and whoever's listening will probably pull me up on this. 1 in 5 people that work today, their job didn't exist when they were at school. So it's something like that.
1 in 5 jobs that exist today will be extinct or not on offer when a child entering education finishes their education.
And it's around just how fast paced. You're right. AI was around in the 70s and the 80s, but how many AI jobs are there now or jobs within AI are there now compared to what they were in the 80s and 90s? There's so many. Yeah. There's so many more now.
Yeah. No, I'm fascinated by this. Like you are in it. In the first time we met, you invited me to a kind of breakfast meeting where we talked about technology. And one of the examples that came up there from a professor at Northampton University was he asked us what was the biggest industry in 1906. And none of us got it right. It was whaling. And the invention of, finding oil in the Middle East kind of ended whaling. And then I offered a similar one, which is the difference between a car and a horse. And the same analogy that's now is the difference between an autonomous driving vehicle and a car that you've got to drive is going to be the difference between a car and a horse. And it just seems like these technical advances are huge, but they're coming much, much quicker. It's shocking to think that, 120 years ago, we were reliant on well blubber.
It's a lot simpler world then, wasn't it? A lot simpler. But it's phenomenal. I look at what does 5 to 10 years, what does it look like? What does it look like for our industry, for the publication? What does it look like for my son who's 8 when he comes out of education at 18? And I think it's fascinating.
It's also scary.
COVID put the world into fast forward, and I think we're still on about ×3 at the moment, going quite quickly. But all of it's good, right?
Yeah, I think that in business, it never seems to be as dramatic, as fast as the hype cycle would have it. But I've got a 24, 25-year-old, and I've seen the technology that they've become accustomed to and they use, and if we're allowed, would kind of be in this immersive landscape, and I can see some of the technologies that are coming in Web3, digital money, for example, advances in blockchain technology, augmented and virtual reality. These are things that I think are going to change normal life quicker than anything else.
How fast-paced technology is having an impact on everyday life. Come back to your comment earlier around mental health. I think is something that we share a passion for, and everybody on the Aiimi bus receives therapy if they wish. Tell us about that.
Sure. I think just to put that into context, I don't like things to be too PC, and I think a lot of people do jump on the bandwagon. So the mental health thing for me isn't just to be kind or nice. It's much more basic than that. When I was 28, 29, at what I would argue was the happiest point of my life. I was a couple of years into a startup. I was living my best life, doing a great job, hiring lots of people. I had more money than I've ever had before, driving the best car I probably had ever had, and found myself constantly thinking I was going to have a heart attack, and taking myself out of where I was working. I think it's funny now, but at one point I drove myself to hospital thinking if I did have a heart attack, then at least I'll be in the right place.
You're in the best place.
Whereas I probably it was a bad decision because I probably would have just croaked it in the...
Was that all health anxiety?
Well,
or was sort of like linked to that? Or
so again, honestly, I thought there was something physically wrong with me, and I'd gone to the GP half a dozen times, and I used to come away from it them saying, we looked at your blood pressure and you done a angiogram and all these tests and whatnot, and you were perfectly fine. And on one occasion, the GP suggested that I went and saw a therapist to get some help. And I went home and said to the missus, scoffing at, how poor the advice was. And she said, no, you really need to go, begged me to go. And it was in that moment that I thought I didn't realise, but I was kind of putting a lot of pressure on her. And again, on reflection, I'd realised I was struggling sleeping. I was like pacing up and down at night, try and have a cold shower to relax. So I went along, it was 3 or 4 sessions I had. And yeah, it was just a life-changing experience where you sit and listen to a professional who was able to help you translate physical things that were happening to you to effectively things that are going on in your head and the way that you're processing them, manifesting itself in a shooting pain down your arm or your heart or your chest getting tight.
The brain's the one part of that body where you pull your hamstring playing football or rugby, or you trip over and you break your arm. You've got that rehab process because you go and get something tangible, which is an X-ray, and you get that medical professional that tells you, yes, you've broken something, and this is what you need to do before it's a full recovery.
Yeah.
But with your brain, you don't.
Well, two quick examples on that. One, we had one of our staff became pregnant, and she was struggling commuting to Canary Wharf, where our customer was. So we ended up adjusting the workday. I'm talking like 15 years ago now. We adjusted the workday so she could come into the office rather than to Canary Wharf and come at a time where it wasn't as busy on the tube. We just did that without thinking. A similar sort of time, another chap who's still here with us now, a group of them went off to do the Free Peaks, the National Free Peaks, and he broke his leg coming down Ben Nevis. And after spending, 6 weeks in hospital, he eventually wanted to come back to work. We adjusted some of the building so that he could get in and move about with his crutches. We arranged a car to bring him in. Because he wasn't 100%, we made some adjustments and everyone was quite comfortable with that. But it's amazing how, if you're struggling with anxiety or you've got any mental health issue, how often that gets swept under the carpet. And, you know, again, in the old days, people just didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to bring it to work.
It was the taboo subject, wasn't it?
Yeah,
So,
it would have been even harder as I'm a man, I'm a business owner. No, I don't need help. And it was how many people have done that, but accepting that help seems to have been huge in the setup for you guys.
For me, it's interesting you use the word accepting, and you're right. There was a degree of having to accept at one point, but now I look back on it and think, you know, it was such a gift. And, you know, I genuinely thought at the time, everyone at the age of 29, 30 should be whipped off the street and given the same treatment, because it's just such a great tool to have in your kit bag. Yeah. You know, everyone is going to feel stress from time to time, and to be able to understand how your brain is making your body feel and what things you can do to keep on top of that is just, surely that's a great skill to have.
It is. And what I'm a trustee for a mental health and suicide prevention charity called Kelly's Heroes. The real shocking, alarming thing, and people within education will be aware of this. You've got children as young as 8 or 9 that are trying to take their own lives, and there's over 1 million searches done a month on how they can take their own lives. That's not all 8 and 9-year-olds, but they're using technology in some instances to go and find that, and that they're the things that keep me awake at night sometimes, where it's like, how can we, and I'm going deep and off on a tangent here, but as businesses, what can we do to help them? Because some people will say, well, tech companies, you know, the social media platforms, surely there's something that they could do to slow that process down or prevent that from happening, in terms of, you know, they know the idea of people when they open up an account. And that's where I'd love to see the world of tech trying to make a difference in that way, because mental health is affecting more younger people now than it did 20 years ago, for sure.
I think the message is always the same, and I think the gift, did you just say, of accepting that help?
Yeah, that's a good.
It's being brave's not the right word, but it's probably back
Honest.
to accepted. Honest with yourself that you need help, and only somebody else can help you by doing it. And again, without going deep, everyone's going to hold it in. They're going to go through that mind, that stress, that anxiety, and it's just it's there to help. So for me, when I read that of Aiimi with the therapy to their staff,
I thought it was brilliant.
Outstanding, fair play, and well done to you. That your customer service is our main focus. Our staff, their well-being is their main focus. And again, another thing that me and Ben say all the time: don't just do something because you have to do it. Do it that you want to do it. Yeah. And you guys are leading that from the forefront.
And then you just add in there, and we're going to double every 3 years.
Yeah, bosh.
just go back to that Beckham series. One of the things that Fergie said is he was seeing his primary job was to relax the players for match day.
Yeah.
And I was a bit blown away by that because I kind of grew up with him as the hairdryer, thinking that was his mantra, was to shout at everyone and get the best out of them. But he admitted that really his job was to make everyone relax, be super chilled, enjoy the 90 minutes. And if he did that, he would give them the best chance at being their best, at taking that penalty, that free kick, that pass. And I believe the same at work. When you come into workplace, everybody is either in the midst of some crisis, maybe they're about to just go into a new one, or just getting over one they've had. And I just think about like getting married, having kids, seeing your families grow, losing people, even things like, people getting sick or God forbid, even worse. But those things are on their minds when they come into work, and it can't help but affect them, right?
I jokingly said to somebody the other day, how is everything? And they basically just reeled off everything that you just said. And I said, work gets in the way. That you've got all of that going on, and then you've got to concentrate on your work because you can't let anybody down. I've got to get on with it. But then you've got that help and assistance there. So I think it's incredible. So we're going to finish with our famous question.
Yeah.
This evening, Steve, you've got a table for 4 at your favourite restaurant, yourself included in that 4, your 3 guests, dead or alive, who and why?
Oh, that is a great question. My first answer went to my wife and 2 kids.
That's the Friday night. We're going Saturday night.
No, that's no. Of course, it would always be your children and wife, as would ours. Frazer,
straight away, yeah, absolutely.
But if you weren't allowed to have people you live with,
they haven't prepared me for this one, so
there's a reason for that.
Oh my gosh. Well, my crush when I was at uni was Kylie Minogue. And I saw her on the TV
at the Brit Awards.
Brits, yeah. I thought the same one.
Thought she was still looking good.
Yeah.
I think she's got a couple of years on me, but she's still got it. From movie land, I've been always been a Nicolas Cage fan.
Okay.
Favorite Nicolas Cage film?
I've got a blank. What's the numbers one with where he's predicting the disasters?
Oh.
What's that called?
I could see the poster of it as well.
I can see it as well.
Go on, we'll come back to that. Go on, Al. That's a cue to Google it.
So we've got Kylie Minogue,
Nicolas
Steve
Cage,
Salvin, Nicolas Cage, and the third guest. Anyone that's been pivotal in your career? Anyone that stood out and said, Steve, what are you doing? This is what you've got to do. Anyone that gave you that kick up the arse that set you on your way?
I suppose not really, but I'm a massive Joe Rogan fan.
Okay.
And Joe Rogan has Elon Musk on his show, and they usually have a few drinks and smoke some crazy stuff.
Well, it's all right.
But yeah, so he's always been a bit of a maverick and has done some crazy things and has got a big vision. So yeah, we'll go with Elon Musk.
Vision, I think I like that. A takeaway from me is I'm going to introduce you to people as Steve Salvin, visionary from now on. And I've almost forgot what Aiimi stood for, so I'm going to stay with Aiimi. But I've really enjoyed this. I think it's been as insightful as I thought it was going to be. I think there will be some great takeaways for people listening, for the understanding of what the future may look like, but how important data is. Don't be obsessed with what's going to happen. Look at what is happening. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Really enjoyed this.
Thanks,
Cool.
Steve.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Cheers.